but that might be just me.
There it
No,
is.
it is recording.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, then, minutes. We have the minutes from June 9th, 2020. Are there any comments, additions, corrections?
Could I please make a couple?
Sure.
One, and you know, if you don't agree with me, that's fine too. But there is a statement that says on the under the reopening part, the library have been explicitly described in the guidance as part of phase 2. Now we know what that means, but I was thinking historically that shouldn't that relate to what the state recommendation is, or wherever that came from, Christine? You know, where
Yes.
did that suggestion come from?
Yeah, that phase 2 refers to the state of Connecticut guidelines for post-COVID reopening. So
Okay, so if it says as described in the state of Connecticut guidance, I think that would make that a little more understandable if somebody's reading it later on.
Hey, Jane, I'm in the Zoom library board meeting.
I also had a question on the part where it talks about the discrepancy in the board accounts. I think there's just a typo there. There's something about the amount.
Yeah, mount instead of amount. There's just an A missing, I think.
Yeah. And then the continuing of that sentence didn't make total sense to me. I mean, I don't know what we were trying to say, but I'm just wondering if that can be cleaned up a little bit for the same thing if somebody else is reading them, not knowing what we meant.
You okay with that, Eric?
Yep, I will take care of all of those.
I have one more item that I want to mention. When we went into executive session, we're always supposed to state why we went into executive session. In other words, it has to be a legal matter or it has to be a personnel issue.
Yeah.
I think those are the only two. I looked in Robert's Rules of Orders and could not find this, but
Yeah.
we do have to state that it's, and I'm not, why did we go into executive session? What does that fit under?
It was contract negotiation or contract analysis. So
would that suit, or should we say regardless, it should have some reason as to why we went in there. So contract negotiations, maybe that would fit.
yeah, contract discussion would work.
But what contract? Personnel contract?
And if I could please have, if I could have clarification from the board, please, on this, because the last time there was an executive session, I had been given direction that I shouldn't put down why. There had been that comment because I had put down for personnel matters and I was asked to change that. So I don't know which way to go and just need direction. I'm happy to do it either way.
I'm just thinking freedom of information, you know, it's all about the secrecy of it that there should be, that we should clarify. And that we're not just going into executive session to, I don't know, overthrow the town or something.
Whatever,
No, it's just
whatever the board wants.
The motion should stay, we say we went into executive session for contract discussion. And that states why we went in for anyone who reads it and says what's going on. So for contract discussion should cover it.
Okay, sounds good.
So as a standard, if we go to executive session, there needs to be a reason documented in the minutes. That's all I was looking for
I think so. I
clarification
think
on.
it will help
Thank you.
just cover us. And it was also good that that we mentioned that Christine was included in that. I mean, I think that was very important to have that there too. Because usually it's just the members of they talk a lot in Robert's Rules about the members of the secret organization. and I don't think that quite fits us, but it also talks about what should happen to someone if they are in executive session and they do not keep the secrets. So we had a problem with that one time, way, way back. But I at the time didn't think about it. But anyway, we're all covered. That sounds good, Eric. All set. I think, yeah.
And Eric, those minutes can just be sent in with these minutes. Any corrections, they'll post those. So, yeah, no big deal.
Yep.
Okay, anything else on minutes? Okay, financial reports. Jan,
Do we need to have
No,
a motion?
we actually have to
I'll make a
approve them.
I'll move to accept them as amended.
I'll second.
excuse me, let me do something here.
It's on backwards.
And upside down. So we have a motion by Ann, and who seconded it?
I did.
Oh, and
Jane.
Jane. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now, Jan, the board managed funds and anything else to talk about. And you're
You're
on mute.
muted, Jan.
Unmute.
There you go.
Am I okay?
You're
Yes.
There
okay.
you are.
I'm still off $9.28, but consistent. And I did the report through the end of, to June 31st. Wrote, I think 4 or 5 checks, Christine, since then, all under the C-card funds. So that line item will be depleted by about $2,000 at this point, Christine. Maybe you can verify that a little bit, but
Yeah, we have spent down the entire, as usual, we use C-card funds at the end of the fiscal year to continue our materials per fleet. We have, as required by state law, spent the entirety of the 1920 C-card funds, and I will submit that report to the state. We have received the next year's funds, but we will not expend those. Well, we expend some of them through the year, but the bulk of that will get spent at the end of this current fiscal year, which just started. So there's about $12,000 in the account right now, a little more maybe. It never gets to zero because we always get more before we spend the last. As long as the state continues to do that anyway.
and aside from the $9.28, are there any other questions about the report? Okay, well, given that, I also need to let you know that I will be needing to resign from the board.
No.
David and I are moving. And within the next few months, probably we've bought a home up in Barkhamsted near my sister. And it's, with a lot of bittersweet kind of feelings that we're leaving the community of Durham, very much so. But our house goes on the market next Monday, so our house in Durham here. So we've been pretty scurrying. So just wanted to kind of put that out there. I anticipate I'll be around in August and probably September or part of September.
We're
Sad
missing.
news, but also
We'll
very
miss you
happy.
terribly.
Well, I'll miss everybody terribly also. It's a tough decision, but it comes at the right time. And I'm
What a terrible loss for Durham, you and David. That's all I can say.
Well, and for the library, all the support you've always given Hal's,
Exactly.
Thank you.
Rat Fink.
I
So anyway, it's very, very difficult to leave. But as I said, we need to be near family. So the time is right.
I'm sure we'll be able to keep in touch via interlibrary loan. So
That's right. That's right. And I'll be back. It's only an hour away. So I intend to come to many in-town events. So
Good,
Good.
good.
Good. Well, we're both sad and happy at the same time. Happy for you that you're moving closer to friends and or family, and that also means a lot. So thank you. That does give us 2 items. One is to have a new treasurer. The other is to have a new board member. We don't need to decide that tonight. I will say that I may hit up former treasurers to see if they might want to do it again. Just saying. But we also need to be thinking about somebody as active, as engaged, and who loves the library as much as Jan to be added to the board. So we also need to be thinking of people that we should approach.
We usually give once we've sort of talked about that among ourselves, we then give those suggestions to Laura because it's an appointment as opposed to an election.
Yes.
Okay. But rather than having her pick someone, it would be nice if we found someone who we knew was interested and loved the library.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yep.
This is, I sit on a number of boards, both in town and for other things. I really love this board. This is so much fun. So I'm just hoping we find somebody who enjoys it as much as we do. So, okay, then moving on, library operational funds. Christine?
Okay, I just wanted to, first off, this is of course through June 30th, which is the end of the fiscal year, but this is not the final report because there were a few June invoices that were still trickling into July. And so I don't have the final report to reconcile with the town. However, this is very close to where we are. So I don't expect any major changes here. A couple of things, if you compared this to last month's, you'll notice that we have in fact spent less in a couple areas, and there is a new line of COVID related supplies at the bottom. The town of Durham, Beth in finance, decided to create a line for all the COVID extra stuff because it may in fact be reimbursable from the federal government. So some things that I had previously and were in our regular line items because they had to go somewhere and we were overspent. Like for example, the mailer. The mailer cost almost $600. We were $600 over in postage. That has been clawed back out of our postage and is in the COVID supplies line. So that's why there is a difference between where things appear here and where they appeared last month. There are a couple of things that I'm having a disagreement with the town about whether they're office supplies or COVID. So there may be a few changes here and there, but essentially this is the final within a few dollars here and there. And you'll see that we expended 97.5% of our allotted budget. We were over only extraordinarily minorly on like postage and custodial supplies. We were a little under on wages because we were without staff for a little while at various points, actually. And electricity came in under, and that's electricity and water, which are, I mean, that's nice, but I couldn't run the lights longer to spend that down. So, I mean, I guess I could have, you know, it seemed pointless. So any questions about this report?
No.
No.
I will have a final version of this by the end of July, and I will submit that with the next, at the next meeting. But it shouldn't budge from this much.
Good. It's a difficult time to get good numbers, and because stuff is late and trickling in and plans change. So thank you. Library directors reports. You're up again.
Me again. So in June and the beginning of July, so we've been spending a lot of time on COVID and reopening planning. In June, the beginning of June, we restarted the curbside service. That was very popular. It was also extremely labor intensive. That was a little tough on the staff, actually. We fell behind in a lot of other areas. You should see the pile of children's books that remains to be processed. But we're working away at that. On July 6th, we reopened the doors for people to come in and browse. After we put away a lot of, some of you have been in, we cleared away a lot of things. It was actually somewhat heartbreaking for me to walk around the library and go, oh, look at all these comfy spaces that we designed to make people want to stay here. They gotta go. But that's where we are. So most of the furniture, the comfortable chairs, the armchairs, the things that can't be sanitized, the children's toys are all stored downstairs. We have extraordinarily classy looking shower curtains around the, don't go in there, Jane. It'll just break your heart.
Are they green?
But it does clear. It's like the fishbowl. But we did not have to bolt anything to the desk, which I desperately wanted to avoid. So there's that. But since we reopened, it has been a steady but slow number of patrons. We, our concern had been being overwhelmed with people. That has capacity, which is, as much as I'd like to see more people in the library, I think that's better. People are adhering to the rules. They are wearing their masks. They are coming in, they're browsing, they're going. They are very appreciative that we are open. And even though it looks slow, I ran the numbers for the first week of July, the first week we were open. And, you know, we circulated as many items in the first week as we did the entire month of June with curbside. So it is considerably more use. We are getting quite a few out-of-towners. A lot of other libraries aren't open, but again, not an overwhelming number. The other big thing we're doing is like we really are adjusting to the not in-person programming. We're finding that certain things work well-ish on Zoom. Certain kinds of lectures, certain kinds of things for adults work well. For children, we're doing
I think we lost Christine.
Ay, ay, ay.
or our webpage, and
Sure.
we're getting a lot of traffic with that and a lot of positive response.
We lost you for just a little bit, but I think we got the gist of it.
She's still lost.
Yes.
Yep,
Now
she's
she's
gone.
totally lost.
He's gone.
She'll sign back on again.
Yeah. There she is again. Hello again, Christine.
I'm back. My laptop decided that it did not want to Zoom any longer, so here I am again on my phone. I try to do the laptop because I can see you all at once, but it doesn't like Zoom. I need to stick to the phone, I think. Anyway, my apologies for that. So that's where things are right now. Things are definitely better from the staff perspective now that we are open and we have, launched all the things that we were talking about and planning for. And, it's going well. Anyone have any questions about? I feel like I was going to say something else, but now, of course, I can't remember what it was. We are still a little short-staffed. I've advertised.
Mariana twice.
Damn it.
Okay, so that's what happens when my laptop decides to rejoin the meeting while I'm talking. But we have shut that down. I've been having a lot of technical difficulties recently. You should see me at the library. But anyway, where was I? Oh, short staff. We have advertised for a new circulation assistant. I hope to have someone in place in early August. Our regular sub, Colleen, does not want to substitute at this time, but I spoke today with Christine Chersick, who is going to do a little subbing for us this summer. So you might get to see her.
That's good.
Yes, she had offered at one point previously during the summers because she's working in a school now. So I think that will be helpful and give us some flexibility because right now with where it is, it's a little wants to know. Anyone wants a vacation day. But other than that, things are rolling along pretty well right now in our new normal.
Have
But,
you talked to other Lion libraries? Are they experiencing the same things you are?
The last time I met with Lion was last week, which was right after we had opened. But yes, that does seem to be the trend, that it's not as overwhelming as some people had feared. A lot of them still aren't open though. We were one of the earlier reopeners.
Hey, Christine, you mentioned the labor intensivity of the curbside pickup. Can you just say a little bit more about that? Like what aspects were the most labor intensive? Like was it the pulling of the books or the delivering to people's cars or like answering the phones or?
Well, pulling the books is not is the same either way.
Okay.
It was the fact that we had to call everyone and set up a time for them to pick it up and then package the books and take them outside. That was the phone calls were the really labor intensive part. There was no way to automate that because they weren't ready until we had pulled them and checked them out. And then it was just a lot more work. Like right now, we pull the books, we scan them, they come up on hold and you get an automatic email and you can come in and get them, as opposed to me calling you and checking them out to you and packaging them up and taking them outside. So
Gotcha. Thanks.
we
And
are
the other
still-
question,
we are still doing curbside if people request it, but that's a much smaller percentage of the total.
yeah. And the other question I had is, at this point, is there anything that you feel like we sort of like either lessons learned for the future or any like aspects of sort of operating in this way that we might want to keep in the future? For example, like have we learned anything about doing programs remotely that we might want to keep doing remote programs, even after this is over? Or is there anything else that we've kind of learned from this process about, controlling spread of disease or anything that we might want to think about keeping?
I haven't really done a lot of deep thinking about the lessons learned yet. Kim was telling me she's been doing a make, it's like the opposite of a make and take program, a take and make. So like craft kits for adults to pick up. And those have been extremely popular. They've been going like as soon as we put them out at levels greater than people have come to the library to do craft programs. So that was kind of interesting. But things that involve kind of discussion, I'm not finding people are not greatly interested in doing it via Zoom. And the children's programming is just not where it should be at all. I don't think that this works for them, for that demographic particularly well. Although our teenagers have restarted Dungeons and Dragons via Zoom. So that was nice. They were very appreciative of having that opportunity.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think obviously there's some programs that won't work on Zoom at all, but it seemed like for some things like the winery lectures, I don't even know if that's a good example, but there might be some things where the flexibility of being able to schedule it at 9 at night when the library is closed, or there might be aspects of it that might be benefits that we could think about, should we continue to offer that kind of thing?
Yeah, there are definitely some things like that.
Well, I've done the genealogy programs that Kim's been doing with Brianna O'Sullivan, and I really like being able to sit at home at 7 o'clock at night, not have to drag myself out, and to be able to sit there in the way she did it with the computer, and to have my notes sitting right there. It was so much easier than going into the library and sitting and listening there. So I think, from my experience with that, I could see where some of those types of programs would be really, if we continued them, I think we'd still get a lot of people to use that kind of program.
Yeah, definitely. It would be interesting to experiment with these kinds of programs even after we are allowed to do things in the library. And I mean, I don't know when that will be at this point.
Well, I could see in the winter when it gets dark early and the weather might not be good and stuff, that we could, pay a couple $100 for a program that people will still be able to enjoy, even though, on a night that you may pay for a program, but nobody wants to drive up there if the weather's lousy. If you can sit at home and have the same experience. I think
Right.
would be good.
And those kind of like genealogy and stuff are the kind of things that, you get the information just as well. But then there are things like concerts and things that I just don't think would work at all via this. We did do one children's program that was kind of a live, it was streamed on YouTube, but the performance was live it was Jester Jim. So it was like an acrobat juggling kind of thing. And I don't think we didn't get nearly the kind of attendance that we would have for a in-person event. Whereas some of the adult programs like genealogy and stuff, we're getting kind of comparable numbers.
Any other questions?
Could I make a little comment on behalf, I think, of all of the board? Christine, in your report, I think you and Kim should be highly commended for accepting the positions that you have just been named to in Lyon and with the Connecticut Library Association. I mean, that's particularly at this time, to be able to step up and accept those responsibilities. Congratulations, and aren't we lucky?
Here.
Dave.
Absolutely. And I was delighted to see that the title is Lion President and not Lion King, because we would have some trademark issues with that.
You know, I'm very, very careful not to offend Disney. We all know
You can call her
that's
Lion,
a bad
you
idea.
know.
Very good. Okay, then moving on, committee reports. Anything from PALS? Have you, anything up with PALS at all?
We've renewed several of the museum passes, so in spite of not meeting, we still have been following through with stuff that we've always done. And let's see, what else? That's it.
For the next time you have a PALS meeting, you know, if you do, or when you do rather, I would like to give PALS an update coming from the board. So if there's an agenda, I could be added to that. I owe PALS a discussion.
Okay, yeah, I'll let Pat know. And we've been doing, you know, like tag team with phones with Jane and, you know, some of the other members, just to keep things moving through. And like I said, you know, I'm so glad that we got the golf tournament in, you know, as the one and final thing. I just finished doing the year-end report and stuff, and Pat and I had gone over it, and she mentioned that the Focal, the library friends group, the state one, so many libraries are talking about trying to put together little book sales outside and stuff that, you know, they're really struggling. And I'm glad that PALS, in all the years it's been, you know, that we've actually been forward enough to think what happens when we don't have, you know, when something like this comes up and we don't have the ability to do fundraising or things like that. So, and to put some of our money aside in CDs and stuff that other library friends haven't done. So I think, you know, we're doing okay. Jane, you know, what do you think?
I agree. Sometimes we seem a little tight, but that's precisely why it's now if we need the money, we have it without worrying.
Right, it'd be sad to be out on the green with a tarp full of books like we used to do, begging for money, so.
Yeah. And we do have, we still are gonna have our annual appeal in November. So Christine and Pat talk back and forth about that, but that will actually end up being our main fundraiser this year, because we can't do really any group programs.
Very good. Thank you. New business. There are a number of things to cover. Christine, you're going to be speaking again. So you want to talk to us about statistical reports? I think that's a fairly short discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I shared the year-end stats with you. Obviously, this was a very strange year statistically. So the year-over-year circulation, for example, programming, there's really not a whole lot to look at the year-end numbers. I mean, we didn't do anything for the last 3.5 months of the year, so that's why the numbers are down. I did run for you the July through February so that you can have like a better look at the real trends, as it were, the non-COVID library use trends. There is one notable thing. We did turn on automatic renewals in last August, and the increase in physical circulation from July to February is driven entirely by the automatic renewals, which is why if you look down at the bottom, I broke out just checkouts. The full year stats, again, are down precipitously because we were closed. But the July through February, I think, are probably the best measure of where our circulation actually was year over year, realistically. The trends downward for juvenile and adult are basically in line for, you know, what we've been seeing. Some of that is offset up top by the increase in e-circ, even before COVID, which of course drove those numbers up immensely. The YA checkouts are down significantly. That is largely population driven, I believe. I am hopeful that when we are able to get back into a more realistic swing of things, Lauren and Kristen have some ideas about, you know, driving some teen use and teen circ. You'll notice that young adult programming is actually up for the year. Young adult attendance, even with COVID, and was up significantly before. That was on the strength largely of Dungeons and Dragons and gaming programs in general. So that's clearly something that is of interest to our young adults. So that's something to build on as well. Any questions about the statistics?
Not for me.
No, there's a lot of numbers there. I kind of feel like this year is, there's not a whole lot to be learned there because there were so many anomalies, but the numbers are there.
I know it's a lot of work, and I know you have to do a fair amount for state reporting, but it is noticed, so thank you.
Yeah, the state report's going to be weird this year. I don't know how that's going to, but it's going to be weird for everyone. So,
Yes.
We did get a very firm note from the state earlier this week that I guess some libraries are, in trying to maintain COVID, are not lending to non-residents. And we got a very firm, if you don't loan to non-residents, you will not get your C-card money. So
Interesting.
because the whole purpose of C-card is to incentivize you to loan to out-of-towners. But I wasn't considering not loaning out to non-Durham residents, so that was kind of a non-issue for us.
But it's also good to have it in writing in case somebody asks about it.
Yeah.
You never know. Before we move on to grant application process, I want to say I have seen some of the grant work that Christine has done, and it's very good, and I owe her some feedback. But to be able to be putting a grant together, grant request together, on top of COVID-19 closing and reopening is a real testament to the dedication of Christine and to the staff as well. So as you listen to this report, put it in the context of this is a very, very strenuous time. So with that, once again, live and in concert, it's Christine.
It's the Christine Show.
Come here.
Okay, so the grant. We are making really significant progress and are on track to submit the complete grant application by the September 1st due date. So the things that have been done in June, we submitted the intent to file form because one has to submit a form to tell them that we are going to submit a grant. Bob and I have been working on what they call the building program, but is the main narrative of the grant. What we're doing, why we're doing it, how it's going to benefit the town, the library, and why they should give us money. So that draft is done, and that's the feedback Bob was talking about. We need to discuss that, but it is, it has a solid draft right now. The resolution authorizing the grant submission was approved by the Board of Selectmen and certified by the town clerk. I must point out that there is another resolution from the Board of Selectmen that has to come up, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. Deanna Dewey and Steve Dewey, her husband, the architect, completed the floor plan documents, the statement of accessibility, and the list of costs and materials, which segues into the costs and materials. To the surprise of absolutely no one, costs have gone up from higher than initially planned. That's partly due to bids being higher and partly to the fact that we added some things. The cost of the original scope of the project, the study rooms, the computer area, the YA area, the new books, has come in at approximately $108,000, including removing the stacks, putting everything back, that part. The accessible doors and some of that paraphernalia is going to be about $12,000. The bathrooms were a late add-in to this grant proposal and are turning out to be pretty expensive. So the plumbing for 2 bathrooms plus a new water fountain, because our existing water fountain is not ADA compliant, is about $11,600, and then $30,000 to retile the 2 bathrooms. So the 2 bathrooms adds $40,000+ to this project. And then the bids I was not expecting. Paint and carpet came in way more than any of us anticipated. So painting the library, this is the whole, excluding the children's room in the lower level, but the original library and the 86th edition came in at just under $35,000, and carpet came in at $72,000.
Whoa, my goodness.
Yeah,
That seems,
they had to lift me off the floor when I saw
yeah,
that.
that seems a little crazy.
That is from a state contract supplier. So that's, anyway, that's the bid. Plus a 10% contingency, and the entire project comes in at $294,000. So obviously half of that, so $300,000 roughly. Half of that will be, we are applying for this grant, and half will come out of town funds and fundraising. So it's a much larger project than we had initially anticipated, but it's still doable, I believe. You know, $150,000 between the town and fundraising is actually, I mean, it's a lot of money, but given the scope of what we're looking for, it's not, you know, we're not talking about a multi-million-dollar renovation. That's where we stand with that. The things that we still need to do to finish the grant app are to finish up the building program, the introduction, and the remainder of the actual grant application form, which is mostly done. I need to get a letter from Town Hall about the plan of conservation and development. Not sufficient that I give the state our plan of conservation and development. I have to have a letter saying we're actually doing it. And we do need a second resolution from the Board of Selectmen certifying the completed grant application once it is in fact complete. However, you know, we are down to the tidying up part of this. I spoke to Maria Bernier today. She's the grant coordinator at the state. She is going to, once we're done with the grant, but before we officially submit it, she's going to read it through for me and make sure that we haven't left out anything egregious. She can't really read it for the content of it and whether it's grantable, but she can certainly let us know that all the pieces are there before we submit. So that's the grant application process report.
Okay, the rest of you can pick yourselves up off the floor now. And we can talk a little bit about the grant, the cost, the scope.
I didn't realize the governor's brother owned a carpet distributor.
Yeah.
Carpet's expensive. I've actually talked to a couple other library directors who have done carpet, and I had no idea carpet cost as much as it does.
And I would like to point out, because I wasn't aware of this, we're carpeting what we're not moving. So we're not moving stacks to carpet under where we already have carpet. This is space only, not structure, the entire structure.
Jacking up the stacks, yeah, jacking up the existing stacks and carpeting under them would add another $75,000 to this bid. So we ain't doing that.
No. Questions have arisen about doing the bathrooms. The bathrooms are pretty disgusting, and they haven't been updated since, well, what, the 97 project at least. So those really need to be done. At the very least, all new fixtures. But if you're going to be taking out all the fixtures, the tile work should also be demolished and redone. That's the thinking there.
We wrote this grant with the intent to do it the best possible way and to get bids for that. And should we not get this grant or not be able to raise funds, well, we'll reconsider pulling things out of it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Does that affect the grant? If you're given the grant based on doing the bathrooms and you pull back and say, we're only doing one bathroom, does that affect the grant?
It will. There are rules about having to expend the grant monies on what you were given the money for. Usually there's a little bit of flex. It's usually a percentage of the grant. I'm not sure exactly how that works here. If we get the grant, we are pretty much on the hook for the other half of the money. I don't think we can dial it back. I mean, they might let us do some of that, but they'll take back half of it. The fact that it's, a much larger sum means the state is also giving us a much larger sum. 50% of more money is more money. So it would depend on the details a lot at that point.
The other piece of this is many of the items are really truly maintenance items, such as paint. Certainly the bathrooms are things that should be capital items from the town of Durham, in my opinion. So I think we need to use a term from the first selectman, socialize these numbers sooner rather than later to the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. And they need to know this is where things are coming in.
Well, we absolutely have to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
The Board of Selectmen has to sign off on the grant with the numbers in it. We need to let them know before they see the grant application where the numbers are coming in at.
Yeah.
They're aware in a general sense, but the numbers are in fact higher than they were when we talked to them at the beginning of the process, and they do need to be made aware of that.
Yeah. We can.
I do think that the fact that if we don't get this grant, then we won't get all the fun things, and the town will still be on the hook for $100,000 plus of carpet and paint, is a really good selling feature for them signing this grant application.
Yeah. Nicely done.
I
Here, here.
just have a question. For some of the ADA stuff, are there corporations or federal grants or anything that we can look into to help out?
That is a possibility of other grant sources for the 50% of the grant of the money that doesn't come
Right.
through from this grant. And the very next item on the agenda is capital planning, which is about how we go about raising the other half of the funds. So yes, there are. I haven't done a whole lot of research on that yet because we are working really hard to get this part finalized. But yeah, that is definitely a possibility.
I also found, looking through some stuff, some of the information from the last fundraiser for the last building that we did. If you want, I can see if I can find some of that stuff. Just how they operated some of the committees and getting people involved with the funny stuff.
That would be great. I guess are there any other questions about the grant specifically before we segue into the fundraising part of this?
Segue away.
Okay, so there are two halves of the funding here. One half is the grant. That's getting close to being nailed down and will be submitted. We are going to then cross our fingers and hope really, 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 really hard that they give us the money. But meanwhile, as soon as we put the grant app to bed, we need to get to work on the other 50%. So socializing the town to do their share is a very big part of that. But the other part is raising funds. And I did have a conversation with Chuck Cumello He's a businessman in town. He's been a very regular and interested donor to the library over the last few years. And he is a finance professional. So I had a chat with him about capital fundraising, just to kind of pick his brain a little. And he strongly recommended that I talk to the Community Foundation of Middlesex County. Thayer Talbot is the director there, but not so much about, they're probably not a great source of actual funds. They don't fund building projects particularly, but they have a very strong advising component as well. And Chuck strongly recommended I reach out to them for help in the structuring of the fundraising part of this, and I do plan to do that. Chuck did offer, he did not have dollar amounts, but he said that he would, in fact, he personally and corporately would contribute to this, and he would help with identifying other possible business contributors. So we do have the ball rolling slightly on that, but I do think we need a capital campaign committee of some sort to organize this next part of the revitalization process.
Well then, everyone step forward.
Bob, you'll be in charge of plaques in case no one has told you. That would be your because you know.
I do plaques and oil tanks, so.
Okay.
So I do think PALS or someone from PALS should be on that committee. I think it would be useful to invite, a couple people maybe who aren't, necessarily board members, but who might be interested to help with that. That might be a good, maybe we could put our thinking caps on a little and think about who might be good fit for that kind of committee.
Yeah, I think that we need to think broadly about who we talk to in town. Certainly, having Chuck at least provide some input to us was very good. The Community Foundation, those people have done a lot of work, and they're, unfortunately, our project isn't something they back, but maybe their advice would be very good as well. So we need somebody who can help Christine and me start to put this together. So I'm not asking for an immediate volunteer, but I would like to talk to some volunteers from the board to add their input. Anyone want to jump in now? Well then. Be thinking about it. I will, of course, be hitting you up individually. You know that. So we need to press ahead. But the first thing is let's get the grant application done. Let's close the loop with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. Christine and I will need to do that on probably a formal basis. I don't know. We can talk about that. So
I guess one question. So if we do fundraising, what entity is it that's doing the fundraising? Is it PALS? Is it the board? Is it the library itself? Is it the town?
It's the board.
Great question.
I think it's the board. I mean, they're the overarching group that's doing this. I don't think you can, because you're going to have quite a few different groups.
such as PALS, maybe the Fair Association, maybe the Lions Club. You know, you're going to have different groups and organizations, but who's really responsible for this whole thing, you're looking at them. You know, I mean, it is the library board.
So if somebody wrote a check, it would go into board funds.
That's
You might have
something
to-
I think we're gonna have to develop, who's
Yeah.
gonna hold the funds. Which
Well,
we,
who does the grant, where do the grant funds go? Do they go to the
The
town?
grant funds go to the town.
right,
We are a municipal library and the grant funds go to the town and are administered by the finance department.
But David raises the excellent point of PALS is a 501c3, so it is tax deductible for those who can still deduct on their taxes, which isn't as many people as it used to be. So I'll just say it that way.
This strikes me as a really excellent question for the Community Foundation,
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
Because I don't really know what's the ideal situation, but I bet they would be able to answer that.
the last building, so we had the development fund, so I'm not sure. And when you were treasurer, I mean, where
Right,
did
the
that,
development, there was a fundraising committee that was made up of board members and other
Right.
community members, and the development fund at that point was its own account.
right,
But I think it was audited and treated as belonging to the library board. But that's how we ended up with two separate columns of
Right,
numbers for
right.
a long time until we decided this year to meld them together.
David,
So I
excellent
think it still
question.
would be separate from board, you know, from our regular board account.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we'll ask that question of the Community Foundation. They will, I'm sure, have a good answer for us, but thank you for the question, David. So, okay, old business. Anything more, Christine, on the reopening that we should know about or discuss?
The only question I had for you is if the board had thoughts about what would trigger either more opening or rolling back. I mean, I think we've pretty much stuck to the state guidance so far, and that seems to be working out pretty well. The question has been raised about programming. You know, that we said we weren't going to do any through the end of the summer. When we said that in April or May, that seemed a long way away. And I thought things might be more better than they are, actually. I'm a little concerned. I mean, Connecticut's on a really great trajectory. The rest of the country, not so much right now. So anyway, Children's Department and Youth is planning for the fall and kind of needs to know whether we should be thinking about in-person or not. My thought is probably not. The kids are harder to keep distant than adults are. And these hybrid kind of programs of like giving them things to do that they do elsewhere seems to be working out pretty well. We're pursuing a grant opportunity for something called a story walk. We're doing one on the green right now on a very temporary sort of basis, just, but we're talking to the recreation department about installing something more permanently at Allen Brook and going after a grant for that. But I do think that in-person programs I think it might be better and to plan for more virtual or hybrid type programs, because I'm getting more and more pessimistic about our chances of being in a position to reopen you know, more than we are now. But I
I
wanted
think
your
you're better-
thoughts on that.
I think you're better off being
Christine?
cautious
I do too.
rather than setting in place a lot of in-person programs and then all of a sudden having to pull the plug and then do something virtual. I think if you do something, you know, some hybrid solution planning forwards, that you'll have, you know, better quality programming than if you have to just all of a sudden pull the plug.
Right. Okay, good. That's what I was thinking as well, but I did want to.
Yeah, Christine, I'm similarly pessimistic about a reopening. I think, you know, the amount of opening that we are right now is probably going to stay the amount we're open right through a vaccine. I think if things open up more, and they're talking about the schools opening, the schools will open, and if the schools open like they say, there's going to be a spike in October and it'll go right back down. I think you should plan that we're going to be at this level of open right through the spring.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of where I was at too, but I want to make sure that.
I don't know,
that we
any
were
of you
on
all
the
feel
same-
different? That's what I see from where I am and all the reading I do and the people I talk with.
Well, I think living in the land of steady habits has benefited all of us. I've gone up to Maine a couple times, and stuff that we do naturally here, I don't see being done necessarily in other states. And having a sister who works in the hospital and has worked on the COVID floors, you know, if you've talked to anybody who's been involved, it's nothing to fool around with. And I don't see us having to jump into big programming and stuff, because I think people aren't interested. I'm planning with the Middletown Garden Club, what are we going to do for our big fundraiser at the Wadsworth Mansion in December? And we're meeting tomorrow because I want to set up 3 or 4 different scenarios. What are we going to do? And are people going to want to be coming to things? And even just meeting, I have people saying, I'm not comfortable going to even an outdoor seating tomorrow. Can we find somebody's house where we can sit outside and meet and just be distant? So I don't see that we need to be jumping in with both feet at this point, and just plan ahead. Like you said, with the you know, virtual stuff, which some of it is working.
I think,
Better than to have to pull everything back.
I would rather go slowly with reopening than have to pull back again. I think that's really confusing for people when we change things frequently.
in that case, I would like to move that the library not resume in-person programming until at least the end of December, with hybrid possibilities October. Does that?
Depends
Does
what you
that
mean
give
by
you-
hybrid. You know, we're doing some hybrid stuff now in the sense of like people coming by and picking things up at the
Oh.
library and then doing them.
Okay.
So I don't think we need to put that October bit in.
Okay,
In-person stuff that I want to push out.
I'm just trying to give you air cover to be able to say the board has said we're not going to do this.
I'll
Does that
second.
apply to meetings, outside group meetings as well? Because that's a concern.
I think it has to.
Yeah, okay. That would be helpful to have a motion from the board saying that we're not going to have programs or in-person meetings at the library through the end of the year.
I'll
Yeah.
second Bob's motion.
You know, if a miracle happens and we have no cases in the state for a month, we could revisit it, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No. No.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the schools do. And even the schools are saying it's depending on what happens in August.
But the
what goes
schools are
forward.
preparing to go back in person. I mean, that's the mandate from the state, and that's what the schools are working to. They're working to being back in person somehow at the end of August, beginning of September. I don't know how it's going to work. If they push it, I think there's going to be a big problem, but that's what the state's pushing towards. I don't think we want to do that, though. I'm with the motion as stated that we're not going to open the library for programs. I don't know if you want to say through the end of the year. Do you say, well, no, you say through the end of the year. Do you want to put something in the motion that says we can revisit it if necessary, or just leave it as?
I don't think
I
so.
mean, just leave it as, we can always
We can always revisit it.
write
Make
our own
another
motion.
motion.
The only question I had is, would we want to say something like in the library building to leave us the option of doing an outdoor program?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we, now the motion should read, no indoor programming or meetings until or through December 31, 2020.
Mhm.
Eric, you have that?
Yes, I do.
So motion made, seconded, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, the strategic plan. I talked to Christine, and with everything going on, strategic plan has not advanced a great deal since we talked about it, but we do want to make sure that we continue to keep it in mind. I did not discuss this with Sherry as the chair of the strategic planning committee, but there isn't really much to report other than we're still trying to come together with operational attributes of the strategic plan. Christine, is that accurate?
Right. The strategic plan itself has been adopted and it doesn't need to be addressed. The annual operation plan that I have been doing yearly is, the fiscal year just ended. The operational plan, we hit some of our goals, but some of them kind of are a bit in limbo in terms of, we set a goal to increase use of the YA nonfiction collection. Well, since we didn't circ anything, we didn't really hit that goal. So a lot of that plan is kind of in suspension. And I have not really been, I haven't set operational goals so far for 2020 to 2021 other than, keeping the library running to the best possible way we can in a pandemic, and the revitalization project. I mean, those are our really two big things. And I don't have an action plan as yet to report to you about for the upcoming year.
I think we really need to ask the strategic planning committee why the strategic plan didn't anticipate the COVID crisis.
It was an unfortunate oversight due to acute stupidity syndrome.
There's a lot of planning people who really missed this one.
Okay,
So yes, most of my strategic planning is kind of up in the air right now.
as with all of ours, I'm sure. Okay, as far as general discussion, do we want to have a meeting in August? I know we have often skipped that meeting, but I wanted to get a sense. Well, then,
With the timing, with the timing of the grants, is there any action that we are going to have to take or need to do in August for September 1 submission?
I mean, technically, no. The library board of trustees is not the signatory on this grant. It's actually the board of selectmen. So there's no motion from the board of trustees that has to happen before this is submitted. Whether you want to report on it before it's submitted is a question that, you know, for you.
Just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything that would hold it up or put it in jeopardy. Thank you.
No, I don't believe so. I think the thing that we might want to meet on, well, I guess a discussion of a new board member. What's the board's role in that, and do we need to meet?
I think we can have an informal discussion. As Jane said, since we are an elected position at town meeting, if there is a gap, it is up to the Board of Selectmen to fill that until the next term is up for the incumbent. So Jan, I don't remember when your term is up, but the person would serve until the end of your term and then would need to be elected. So we would come up with a candidate and recommend that to the first selectman. That is not required that we come up, but as was said earlier, if we can identify a person or persons that we think would be appropriate, that's part of our charge.
Jan, have you submitted your resignation yet?
No.
Good. Don't
Good.
do that for a
Don't
while.
do it.
Don't do that.
I mean, no, I mean, because,
Yeah.
no.
Because we don't want to take the chance that somebody decides it's totally out of our control and somebody just decides to appoint Lily Smith or something, you know. Anyway,
Yeah.
Who hates libraries, something like that. So if you can hold off until you, and that gives us a chance, all of us, to think if there's anybody in the community that we know who's, you know, interested in libraries or who would be very effective on the board. And not that it's an absolute, but we're supposed to have, unfortunately, the whole political representation. Jan, did you come on as an independent or an unaffiliated, or as a Democrat or as a Republican?
I think I probably came on as an independent, although I'm
Okay.
not anymore.
Okay. I mean, are you registered in a party?
Yes, I'm now a registered Democrat.
Okay, all right, okay. So that it used to be that we had to replace one with the, you know, with the same, but I'd have to look back and see in our.
Yeah,
I don't.
I think that I think if we nominate somebody, the likelihood is that
They would be accepted.
they would be acceptable. Yeah.
I agree.
Well, I think this makes us, which it used to be, is 4, 4, and 1.
Mhm.
It's not that way anymore because I don't belong to a party anymore either. So, you know, we're off. I think we're off balance if we were supposed to have been on balance.
Well, technically you were,
I was then.
yeah.
I'm not sure you're balanced now, but we'll move on.
No, you're more balanced now.
We're all a little unbalanced right
Yes,
now.
that's right.
It's the
That's right.
times. It's the times.
Okay. So back to the question, should we meet in August or do we want to not? We would have to have a motion to do so, and I would have to alert the town clerk that the meeting in August is canceled, but it's your call. So,
Given the state of things, I don't think we're going anywhere.
yeah.
Oh, we're all going on vacation, aren't we? We're all going maybe overseas. Everybody's taking a trip, yeah. In
Well,
our
it does-
mind.
It
maybe
does
in our-
make it easy if I'm in Maine, because I can just sit here and
Yeah, Bob,
do that.
Bob, you may just want to have the meeting. It could be a very truncated agenda to just go through, one or two things that need to be taken care of.
Okay, I'm getting a sense of the board.
Yeah, Lynn makes a good point. No matter in this configuration, we could be in Maine, Pennsylvania,
You're right.
wherever. And if it was a half-hour board meeting, just to get the necessaries done, that would work fine.
Okay, sounds good. So we're on for August.
Okay,
All right.
good. Good.
Any other items of general discussion or concern or sharing?
Happy Bastille Day. Vive la France.
Today
If
is
only we
also
could be
National
there.
Mac and Cheese Day.
It's what?
National.
National Mac and Cheese Day.
Oh, well then.
Yeah.
Okay. Not hearing anything else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is now closed at 8:53 p.m. Thank you all and be safe.
Good to see everybody.
Good to see you all.
Everyone.
Remember, you can come visit us now.
I know.
See
Wonderful.
the shower curtains yourself.
Christine, is the self-check up and running?
The self-check is running, yes.
Okay,
okay.
just thinking
Good.
that would be, a safe thing to do. Okay,
Jane, when you're going to the library, I want to be there so I can see your face with the shower
with
curtain.
the shower curtain.
It's just
Maybe
lovely.
Maybe I'll wear one.
It's the classiest shower curtain ever, Jane. Don't
Oh, I
worry.
can imagine. I can just imagine. All right, it
Okay.
will do.
Okay.
Okay.